Welcome back to Critical Conversations. We're happy to have back with us Bob Duval from the NFPA. Bob's been a frequent guest on our program for quite a number of times. And the last few times we've asked him specifically to talk about the electric vehicles and the lithium-ion batteries. Um, uh, there's so much truth and so much garbage out there. So when we have those kind of conversations, we go to the guy who goes to the conferences and is responsible for knowing what's going on. So uh, also, as a reminder, we're on a new platform. So if things go a little hiccupy, we're still working those things out. So Bob, tell us about where you got the information that you're going to share.
Okay. First of all, thank you for having me back. I always enjoy our time together here, and this allows us to get some information out in a manner that we might not be able to, some of the audience that we might not be able to reach otherwise. Tonight's is more of a continuation of my earlier meeting with you folks on batteries in general. That program kind of covered everything from the small cylinder batteries you've got in your laptops and music devices and small hand tools to cars and right up to battery storage systems, the big utility grade batteries. Tonight we're going to talk specifically about EVs, electric vehicles. A couple of years ago, the National Fire Protection Research Foundation, which is an arm of NFPA, conducted some research on packs, modules, and full-size vehicles and drove the batteries to failure and then watched what happened and then tried various suppression tactics, water with additives, some appliances, and then blankets. So the program I'll show you in a couple of moments is an abbreviated version of the research findings of that project. The report hasn't been released yet. It's still undergoing its final review. And then once that's released, you'll see at the very end, there's going to be some micro learning modules that NFPA is going to provide for free on the website that kind of addresses each of these steps that we'll cover tonight. So instead of 97 slides in the program that they've given a few times, this is probably about half that many. And it's going to cover the highlights, and it's also going to be mostly video. So rather than just do eye chart PowerPoint slides, we're going to look at some actual videos from the research, as well as one that a fire department shared with the fire service on an EV fire in a garage and what they encountered and what they had to do to finish suppressing the vehicle.
Very good.
All right. You want me to start sharing, Nick?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, let's do that.
Excellent.
All right. How's that? Can you see the full slide?
Yeah, we got it.
All right. Yeah. All right. So, like I mentioned, this was a research project that the Research Foundation within NFPA did, funded by an AFG grant from 2021. And these were the folks that participated, provided subject matter experts and such as part of the research. So just kind of in review, EVs have been out for a little while. There's hybrids and then fully electric vehicles. As a matter of fact, I was able to find a picture of Nick's first car. And here it is.
I love that car.
So this was probably back in the early 1900s. So electric vehicles have been around for quite a while. My guess is the range on this car was probably a couple of miles versus a couple of 100 miles that we get with the vehicles we have now. But the biggest issue, and we all know this in the fire service, the biggest issue with the EV batteries is that they're buried inside the car. So with an internal combustion engine, we can get to the problem relatively easily by opening the hood or putting a piercing nozzle through the hood or the trunk or wherever to get to what's on fire. If the fire's in the passenger compartment, if the window's not broken, we break a window, apply water in the passenger compartment, and the fire goes out. That's not the case in EVs because where the fire is originated, if it starts in the batteries, is very, very difficult to get to because as you see in this diagram, they're buried in the frame of the car for performance reasons, center of gravity, et cetera, et cetera. So this video kind of sums up. This is out of Colorado. This was shared through multiple media outlets, and it's available on YouTube if you search for it afterwards. And this is a hybrid fire in a garage of a townhouse complex in Colorado. And you can see and hear what the fire department went through in extinguishing this fire, what they had upon arrival, and then the suppression efforts, and then what they had to do to fully extinguish the fire. So we're just going to let it go. It has an audio track as well.
Could I? All right. I'll talk about after.
Okay.
Hazmat 17, Engine 44, Medic 44, Battalion Chief 4, Safety 2, reported residential structure fire.
Badge Engine 44, we have a visible plume from Lincoln.
Copy, visible plume from Lincoln.
Air dispatch, Battalion 4.
Battalion 4.
Based on the location of the EV in the house, let's go. Confirmed.
Copy, going confirmed, 1455, break. Again, the EV is going to be in the garage. It is spreading to the structure. Your winds are going to be variable at 3. Battalion 4, dispatch.
Okay.
Sir, we can see it on the video, and it is spreading throughout the garage.
I copy. It sounds like everybody's out for the PD channel.
Confirm, it is evacuated.
Dispatch, Engine 44.
Engine 44.
Engine 44 is on scene at a small two-story residential structure with a working garage fire. Engine 44 will be offensive, searching engine to quarter, not tank water for fire attack. Engine 44 will be located on the alpha side, almost in Vienna command.
Copy, Engine 44 on scene, small two-story residential structure fire, working correction garage fire, stretching an inch and a quarter on the outside, assuming Vienna command at 1415.
Dispatch, Vienna command.
Command, go.
360 is complete. The structure does have a basement. We got several explosions coming from the garage. We're going to be defensive in the garage, working offensive on the rest of the structure.
Engine 44, copy, and command, you are clear that it is an EV, correct?
Command copies.
Garage fires always create different challenges for us just because of all the unknowns that are in people's garages. When a electric vehicle is thrown into that mix, it creates a completely different challenge for us just because of the inherent nature of electric vehicles when they catch fire. Our main concern is that exposure, fighting the fire within that garage, making sure that it doesn't extend to the building itself, but then also making sure that we're not directly impacting the environment by putting that water directly on those batteries that are burning also. So creates some significant challenges, and obviously our main concern is that exposure that vehicle's in. So we're going to do as much as we can to protect that exposure, fight that garage fire as a structure fire while still protecting that vehicle that's on fire. See, fire crews are directing their hose lines at the structure, so at the ceiling of that garage level, to cool the ceiling to prevent it from getting into the structural members of that home, instead of pointing those streams directly to that car to extinguish it. So with vehicle like this one, where it was inside of a garage, affecting the structural members of that garage, that exposure being the house, we're using those EV blankets as a exposure protection. So we're using it to smother the flames, smother that heat, so that we can protect that exposure being the garage until we're able to remove that vehicle from the garage itself.
Engine 44, move that line. We're going to pull the car out. The deer line out of the path. Safety 2, go ahead.
All right, everybody on the other side of the driveway, or on the other side of the house, where it's like full stop.
Say again. Just beware and man that hose line. Nice, 3 off here, looking good, deep guard. Med 1, command. Have any ice melts or logs have any ice melts?
Once it's been removed from the garage, then we can open up that blanket again and then we'll let those batteries go back into their natural progress through that thermal runaway and burn off like our normal procedures with these electric vehicles.
Additional blanket off of hazmat 17, or we need another crew to grab it for you?
If we extinguish it, we'll see that it, if it's in that combustion engine, the fire will go out pretty quick. If it's still in those battery components, as crews release that water on it, it'll still go into that pressurized flame, indicating that it is part of that battery component itself. Over the course of the last few years, we've started to see an increase in lithium-ion batteries catching fire, from the small tool-size batteries, mobility device batteries, the scooters, the electric bikes. Now we're starting to see some in these electric vehicles also. So it is a learning curve for us as a fire department also. With each one, we take different learning lessons, figure out if our tactics are the best that they can be from the hazmat standpoint. A lot of us are attending seminars, taking classes to learn the best responses for these battery fires, but we're doing our best to help protect our citizens, the exposures that may be presented from these fires, and then making sure that we're not affecting any environmental impacts also. So,
all right, I'll leave it there, Nick. The rest of it is just kind of a wrap up on what they did. So you saw that they applied a blanket. They didn't get that on the video, but they applied a blanket and then they towed the vehicle out of the garage. So it eliminated any further damage there. They could go in and finish up the structure fire part of it. And then they were going to deal with the electric vehicle part. Now that still was quite flaming when they put it on the flatbed. I don't know if the tow truck operator is going to want to take that to the recovery yard. But that part is not addressed in the video. So, yeah, I mean, you said you had a couple of things you wanted to either ask or point
I
out.
wanted to just comment. So, for the folks that are YouTube nerds like me, South Metro has an inordinate number of videos. They actually have their PIOs on call, and they have just a ton of stuff, number one. Number two, how they talk there with all the incident command language, that's how they talk all the time. So that's not something that was made up for a training evolution. That's, if you listen to their stuff, that's how they talk all the time. And again, so I would suggest you look at that. The other thing that Bob, I don't know if it's still true or not. I had a guy from the FDNY in the class with me, and he said you're going to have multiple fires. And so you can't park that car by everybody else in the yard. That has to be separated, right, from everything else in the yard, because it's going to catch fire again.
Video to go back to my other video. You hear them talk in there about not applying water on the actual battery. And that was their MO back then. They now have changed slightly to say, listen, they can apply water to the battery. It's just that you have to be careful. They were concerned about runoff and some other things as well.
Yeah.
So, all right, I just had to move it ahead. That video wanted to finish. That was the problem there. So this is just a quick video of we're getting more and more of these posted online, speaking of YouTube, where cars, EVs or hybrids will just burst into flames in parking garages or, parked outside of a building or what have you. This is one from overseas, but it's not sped up. That's how rapidly that combustion is going to happen. You see smoke, and then there's a vapor blast, and then off to the races. So just a little overview on the batteries themselves, especially when it comes to EVs. Depending on the manufacturer, some of them start out with the small cell that's a little bit bigger than a AA battery. Then they put it into multiple cells into a module, and then they'll put multiple modules into a pack. Some manufacturers don't use the cylinders; they use pouches. It just depends on the science that manufacturer is using. But the idea is small, medium, and then large, and they put everything into a module. That's what you're going to find in the car. The size of the module is dependent on whether it's a full EV or if it's a hybrid. The hybrid will have a smaller battery pack versus the whole car being powered by the batteries. So this is a bit of an eye chart, but what it does is it reviews the existing training recommendations that were based in all of the information that we had at the time the research was conducted. So water was still your best friend. It was going to do the best with the least amount of either cost or setup and other things. Full PPE is mandatory for these things because of the gases that are coming off of the batteries and the other components. And they were saying large volumes of water were required. Reignition is possible. It is. And it all comes down to stranded energy, which we'll talk about in a little bit when we get to the research. If the battery is completely devoid of energy, if it's burned right out and there's no more energy in there, your chances of reignition are very, very slim because there's nothing to generate the reignition. But if the fire just damages a small portion of the battery and the battery still has a lot of stranded energy remaining in it, then your chances of reignition are very high. So we'll talk about that in detail in a little bit. Tactics, still it's a good idea not to blindly pierce any part of the vehicle with a piercing nozzle or a halogen bar or anything like that, because you may hit something that's energized. Offensive attack, get in there with the water, get it into where you can. Defensive attack is more just sitting back and preventing it from spreading to an exposure if that's the only option you have available to you. And then overhaul, do the best you can in extinguishing the fire, and then kind of sit and wait a little bit to see if there's going to be any reignition and get it to a recovery yard as soon as you can. But stress to the tow truck operator and or the police, do not put it in the building. Do not put it near a building. Do not put it near other vehicles. Give it 50 feet of clear space, at least for 48 hours or so. So in case there is a reignition, it doesn't set, the other things on fire. Especially if it was a serious injury accident, the police are going to want to inventory it. They're going to want to go over it and check it. They often will bring that inside a garage to do so that the lighting is better, especially if the climate is a little harsh. And if they do that, they have to be extremely careful because if there's any reignition, they have to be able to get that thing out of there ASAP.
Yeah, it's not going to work.
All right. So when the research was put together, the proposal for the research, they wanted to get these questions answered. Traditional firefighting approaches, are they optimal for EV fires, or do we need to come up with something else? What are some alternatives available to us at this point? How do they perform in comparison to water? Just two hose streams versus some of the other alternatives. And then what is the impact of the tactics? How are we going about it? Should we change our tactics up a little bit to either extinguish the fire more quickly or suppress it and cool it while we're doing other things like applying the blanket, etc.? So similarities and differences between the two. ICE refers to internal combustion. So that's a gasoline or diesel powered vehicle. EV is just that. So what is being released? Toxic gases in both fire scenarios. You're going to want to wear breathing apparatus. You're not going to want to take it off unless you're miles from the vehicle. The EV, you've got some of the stuff with the batteries and the other components that are in there. So you got heavy metals with lithiums and some of the other things that are coming off of that. The toxic gases are still being analyzed. There's a laundry list of stuff that's off-gassed on an EV fire. You could have a vapor cloud explosion. We will show you one later in the program. The fires, you saw that a little bit in the Metro video, and you'll see it in the research videos. The batteries are equipped with vents. When they catch fire, the fire is often sent through the jet in a jet form through the vent port. So you'll see jets of flames coming out of wheel wells or other parts of the vehicle. You found a vent for the battery. That's where that's coming from. Once it starts to consume other things around it, the fire will just come out wherever it's melted through things. But at first, it'll come out through the vents. and it'll be like a jet. It'll come out, in under the car and in a wheel well sort of scenario. The temperatures are about, similar, 1,000 degrees Celsius, several thousand degrees Fahrenheit. The heat release rate is comparable, 8 megawatts. The battery debris, especially if it's the small cylinders, you'll see the cylinders underneath the car. And I got a picture of that when they flipped one of the cars up on its side to finish extinguishment. Those all have to be accounted for and collected by the recovery people or the hazmat people when they come out. And with the EVs, there's a reignition risk. And we've talked about that with the stranded energy component. So the tactics that were looked at as part of the research, the first one, and that one is always on the table, is let it burn. If there's no exposures, if it's in the middle of the road or on the side of the road and there's no exposures, and you pull up with 1,000 gallons on board and a tanker coming that's 5 minutes out, and that's the best you can ask for the next 15 or 20 minutes, the best option is to let it burn. And then when it gets down to a small enough size and it's consumed a lot of the combustible materials, you can finish suppression with the water you bring with you. No need to set up a 12-tanker shuttle for an EV that's probably going to be out before the third tanker arrives on scene. So it's an option that's available to incident commanders. I know several that have done it just based on that. I can't get enough water here fast enough. And it was a lost cause when I pulled up. It was burning from one end to the other. There's no salvaging this. The insurance company's going to write it off and, take it from there. Direct suppression, water or water with an agent in it, an additive. And then how do you apply it? And we'll talk about that in a couple of the slides. Water application appliance. The research looked at 2 appliances. One of them was a piercing abrasion cutter that uses abrasive to cut the metal, so making a area or a hatch to get water into the battery compartment, maybe even cutting through the battery compartment. And then the other one was a water curtain type appliance that you slide under the vehicle and it applies cooling water under the vehicle. It's a low profile device. You hook it up to a hose and you slide it under the vehicle from a relatively safe position. The blankets, they tried 2 blankets, 2 brands of blankets as the research. And while the manufacturers said there was no need to keep the blanket wet after it's applied, they felt it best to do that, and it probably ended up being a better outcome by just applying water to the blanket once the blanket was applied over the vehicle. And then the last one that they didn't talk about, I have one little picture of something we'll show you, is submersion. In other words, you've got the dumpster full of water and you submerge the vehicle and then put it on a flatbed and get it out of the roadway. It's being used in Europe, and I understand it's coming to the United States. I've heard that it's out on the West Coast, but I haven't seen anything yet. But it eventually will come to this country. But it's an expensive option, and it's one that who's going to take care of it? Who's going to get it to the scene? It's going to be like highway authorities, turnpike authorities, state police or sheriff's departments are going to have to do it, because fire departments are probably not going to want to babysit this thing and then have to get it out to the highway when there is an EV fire. So those logistics have yet to be worked out. But I've got a photograph of one later in the program. So that's all of that. Okay. So direct and indirect cooling. Do you apply water directly to where the fire is? Or in this case here, you see that they put the car up on blocks and they're using like a ground monitor type nozzle to just apply it and cool underneath. How you do this is based on your equipment, your tactics, your staffing, all of that stuff, and what's available to you. And just think that monitor is probably 500 gallons a minute. You're going to have to apply it for several minutes. Do you have that amount of water? Is there a hydrant that you can tie into, or are you shuttling water from a remote location?
Bob, powders won't work on this, right?
Now they've tried, and there's no cooling effect. So the closest you come is the additives, which is a surfactant type thing where it coats the battery and kind of smothers it, And then as it dries or as it is applied and heat is applied to it, it hardens. So it kind of smothers things. But it's expensive. It's like a foam. It's a slurry that you'll have to apply through an eductor on your nozzle. And once it's there, it kind of coats it, and it's going to make it hard for your thermal camera to actually see heat signatures inside. So it's got pros and cons. One of the cons is that it's expensive, and you're going to have to make an investment in it if it's something that you're gonna want to do. Or
And it'll probably expire.
it probably has a shelf life. I don't know that much about it. I know that they'd used 2 different kinds in the research, but I haven't seen any of that data on the shelf life and other things that go along with it. So again, just a quick little thing. They use water, just straight up water, using hose streams, and they use they're calling it Agent A and Agent B, a surfactant-based encapsulator and a liquid mineral-based encapsulator. What it does is it encapsulates the battery and it reduces the heat. And then the other one suppresses vapors and provides some cooling effects, Agent B. It's applied with a hose line or extinguisher cans. Now, when you see the number of cans required to put out a fire, you'll say, yeah, I'm probably not going to go that route because you'd have to carry a dozen extinguishers on your apparatus. And I don't know any fire chief that's got that much room on his engine unless he's sending a special vehicle out onto the highway for EV fires. All right, and then blankets, we'll talk about the design of the blanket. There were 2 different blankets used. One was heavier than the other. It contains the gases, it contains the vapors, but you'll see an issue with vapor suppression and then a vapor explosion in one of the experiments. So these are the 2. One of them was a silica textile, single-sided, and then one was a graphite textile, double-sided. You see one was a little heavier than the other, both about the same size. And the rated temperatures you can see were much different. One was 1800 Fahrenheit and one was up to 4500 short term. But as you saw in the video from South Metro, those blankets just come apart. You saw the burn through and everything else. They're single use. If you just consider it a single use appliance or piece of equipment, then you're going to be okay. Some manufacturers are going to tell you that you can reuse it, but your biggest question for the manufacturer's rep is going to be, how do I decon it? And that question is unanswered because there's not possibly a way to decon it completely so you can roll it back up and put it back in your apparatus. So consider it a single use if you can. Unless somebody comes up with a much better way of deconning it, it's probably going to be a one-time only thing. Ultra high pressure extinguishing lance. This is the one that they used in the research. It uses an abrasive to cut metal. Expensive, and once the abrasive media runs out, you have to shut the operation down and reload. So it'd be like an 8-round magazine on your rifle. As soon as the 8 rounds are over, you have to take it and put a new magazine on. You have to shut down. You can't continue to operate until you reapply more abrasive agent.
Are they like blasting it?
Yes, it's like a high pressure blast, but it's a very, very small nozzle, so you use it to cut. If you recall, I showed a video in my other presentation from a couple of years ago. If you can recall that, you've got better memory than most. There's a video from the Czech Republic that's available, I'm pretty sure, out there, and I can send it to Jaymie to share, where they use the lance to cut open the floor of an EV and apply additional water before they move that vehicle. They want to make sure that that vehicle is completely extinguished because they have to put it in an elevator and get it out from below grade in the parking garage. So they wanted to make sure it was 110% extinguished before they put it in that elevator. So this is out there. It's an option to you, but the one thing that's going to trip up everybody is the cost. And it's very bulky, as you can see. The machinery behind it is, probably the size of an old school hydraulic extrication power plant. And then you've got the abrasive reservoir on the side of it. So it's like on a pallet. So it's not something you're going to be able to put on a piece of fire apparatus. It's probably going to have to come on a special vehicle that has that room. The low profile distribution is just that. You see it here. It's meant to slide under the vehicle and then just apply cooling water to where the battery pack is under the vehicle. And it applies about 500 gallons a minute. So again, you have to account for that water supply. So that covers that. All right. So, Nick, you have any questions before I get into the next bunch of videos?
I think the biggest thing I'm taking away is, unless you have a lot of money, I think on an industrial application, they might have the ability to have that powered air pressure, and guys that actually know how to do that stuff. But I don't foresee that coming off a reel, off of a special rig, unless it's like the railroad or something. I don't.
Yeah, or a really high-end hazmat or tech rescue, urban search and rescue type operation in an urban area where they may use it for other things like cutting open doors and things like that. But just like everything else, it may, over the years, they'll come up with a smaller model that's probably a little bit more cost-friendly. But just like everything else, we have to crawl before we walk. So, all right. So the next couple of videos are pack level size fires. So that's the actual battery pack that's in the vehicle without the vehicle around it. So just a couple of things. What they do to make these batteries fail. So they did it the same way for everything. They did 27 experiments. For every experiment, they drove the battery to failure by overcharging it. So if it charged at X current, they charged it at X times 10. So once it failed, they let it burn for 10 minutes before they applied any water or agent or anything else when they got to the suppression part. So that's the roll-up time. That's the 911 call, the response time, the setup time, pull your lines, get firefighters on the lines, all of that. So they allowed it to burn for 10 minutes. And then if the fire wasn't extinguished after 60 minutes, they shut it down. They didn't just let it burn forever or check for, energy after 60 minutes. So we'll kind of cover some more things between that as we go along. So these are battery packs, and every manufacturer has a different design. So it's just like looking at a Ford engine, a Chevrolet engine, a Chrysler engine, a Mercedes engine. Everyone is slightly different. And it's the same with the battery packs. So the one on the left that looks like a T, that is meant to go under the rear seat and then where the transmission hump would be. And those of us that are old enough to remember transmission humps in cars, that's where that would be in that vehicle. So that's the configuration of that. The other two are more rectangular and kind of flat, and they would fit under the vehicle. In a pickup truck type thing, it would be under the body of the truck, the bed of the truck, I should say. And in a car, it would kind of go from the front wheels to the rear wheels. So this is there won't be any suppression here. This is a battery pack. You can see the size of it from the red posts, the four corners. So there's a post at 12, 3, 6, and 9, and then there's a couple beyond that. And this is in a pod, in a enclosed area. And they drove it to runaway, and you'll see the clock at the bottom, and then you'll see it go to failure, and you'll watch the failure modes. Watch the jets that I talked about, and just the amount of flame once it fails.
Jesus Christmas.
Yeah, that's not sped up. Now, see the little sparking and arcing? Those are cells that are failing individually, and some of them will rocket out of the pack. Okay, and now you see an entire module is failing. Now, see the jetting coming out? It's just like if you cut a hole in the roof of an attic fire, the fire comes flying out of there under pressure until everything's equalized. That's the same concept here. The fire has got a vent port out of the side of that enclosure, and that's where it's venting. You'll see them apply a little water through that curtain on the side because I think they were afraid the pod was going to burn down over the course of time. But we're only a couple of minutes in. So if this happens on the side of the road, the 911 call is just coming in to your dispatch center at this point. And people are being alerted that there's a car fire. Now, unless the operator is specific and tells the dispatcher, or the dispatcher is on the ball and asks, is it a internal combustion car, or a gasoline or diesel car, or is it an electric car or a hybrid? In jurisdictions that have a lot of highway responses, that might be a good question for your dispatchers to start to ask. So you can give the companies, while they're en route, a little bit of a heads up that it's an EV or a hybrid versus a gasoline or a diesel.
The thing that's impressive to me is it doesn't matter if it's this car or one of the electric bikes. If you've watched the videos,
it's a smaller platform. Exactly. The batteries on the bikes are just as scary, but it's usually a smaller platform. But where is the bike? It's in the lobby of the apartment building. It's in the hallway. Exactly.
It's in the hallway.
Yeah, it's in your bedroom and in the hallway to your apartment. A lot of places in the cities are giving designated rooms for charging of micro-mobility devices, and they're outside the building in like a metal shack. And they bring the electricity over there, and they've set up several charging stations. So if one of the bikes goes into runaway, the fire is contained in that building. So the fire department can just come, shut the power off, and they only have to deal with like a small pod or a tool shed size building, rather than having a dozen of these things in the basement of a 40 apartment, high 6-story 40 apartment building, and expose the entire occupants of the building.
I do have another question. So these are all big batteries, right? Mm-hmm. So how come we're allowed to bring our phones on airplanes, even though I know that they now have a special flame retardant bag, a cool place the bag goes. They trained all their employees to use some type of it looks like a CO2 extinguisher, some kind of extinguisher to slow it down. Mm-hmm. So if you laptops, I guess we're lucky. Maybe it's in the engineering and the design, but we're lucky we don't have more of those flame out. But
yeah, there's been some cases. I researched one where a laptop caught fire in an overhead luggage compartment on an airplane. Thankfully, the plane was on the ground when it did it, and it burned the top right off the plane. By the time the ARF guys got there and started to extinguish the fire, it had already burned up into the space, the head space above the luggage compartment, and burned the length of the plane. There are a lot of warnings now. When you travel, you're not allowed to bring battery charging banks on board or use them on board. I think is probably the protocol. You can bring it, but you have to keep it where you can see it, and you can't use it. In other words, don't get on there and run your laptop off of this battery bank or charge your phone on the table. If the flight attendant sees that, you're probably going to get scolded and told you can't do that. So yeah, it's been a matter of luck, I think, in some cases. And there was a time where there was a lot of videos popping up where people were taking video of smoking laptops and phones on airlines and airplanes, and the damage or the smoke and things that they cause, and it may result in a immediate rerouting of the plane. They're flying over they're going to one city, they might land in another city just because of the amount of smoke on the flight. So I know that the airlines are worried about it. They've come up with protocols and things for it, but it's a matter of just being extra cautious. But we know how the average public is going to be. They're not thinking about that like we are in the fire service. They're thinking, oh, geez, I'm not going to charge my phone. I'm going to make sure it's off and it's in a pocket where I can see it in case something does happen. They just stick it in their bag, and it's in the overhead or it's under the seat in front of them, all crunched up with everything else. And it's a problem.
That's actually why they do not want you, if you drop your phone even in the chair, they want you to push the button.
Yep.
Because if you start moving stuff, you could actually crack that phone.
Yep. They have a tool. They have a tool on the plane. It looks like a Jaymie thing for breaking into cars, and it gets under the seat, and they'll pick up your phone and move it to a safe spot where you can grab it. So they don't want you to further recline or bring your seat forward because you're going to crush the phone and crush the battery. So.
Did you see that? That one that was on it. It was on some kind of an Asian airline, and it's the compartment over somebody, and of course everybody and their brother is like, "Are you kidding?" And they
Yeah.
can't move. They're not run. The good news is they're not panic, but they're not able to do
Right.
anything.
Right.
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 And then
So.
a very brave young man from a steward came over and started knocking it down. But again, that created an emergency in flight.
Right. Right. Yeah. It happens quite a bit. The news media usually picks up on it quite a bit when it does happen, because they want to tell people that it's a hazard that you could encounter. So, all right. So that module or that pack went to flaming combustion. These do not. Just, keep an eye on them. Now look at the color of that smoke. Just on the color alone, you wouldn't want to be within a mile of that. But you can see the overpressurization. You see the bottom one on the right. You see how much it just swelled up. That's the pressure being held inside the case. But it is venting in a couple of spaces, as you could see.
Yeah, or melting.
Yep. All right, so we're going to get now into, that's the battery packs and the modules. Now we're going to get into the vehicles. So there's two examples here, and the one I'm going to show you first, the white vehicle. I want you to watch before you see combustion, what's going on with the vehicle. And again, that is not sped up. That's not Hollywood. That's real. You notice the taillights were going off? They were flashing. If there was sound to the video, there's also the horn going off. So there's an electrical short circuit just seconds before that battery fails. Not enough time to say, oh, I think it's time to get out of the car. But if you come upon a vehicle that is, in an accident, or you suspect it's an EV and the battery is going to fail, and it hasn't yet, and you hear some sounds like the horn, and the horn's going off, the flashing, the lights are flashing, and you see some type of vapor, coming out from under the vehicle, stand back. I'll play it one more time if I can here. Here we go. The firefighters are just gearing up in the background.
Jesus. And if you're now that when this comes in and gets going, does that get into the passenger compartment, or is that?
It will. It will, because it's right underneath the floorboard. So the floorboard is thin metal, thin gauge metal. And I'm sure it's a certain gauge based on,
if that was an occupied vehicle, they'd have to get that door open and come through the fire.
Yeah, pretty much. Yep. All right. So this one here, there is no warning. You get vapor, and then you get a mushroom cloud. That's it.
This is Christmas.
All right, so we're going to go on to the videos from the actual. So we had three manufacturers. Manufacturer C, as you see, is missing here. For whatever reason, they started the research, but then they couldn't complete it. I don't think they could provide enough equipment, so they were dropped out. So anyway, you see manufacturer, it's A, B, and D. D was the bigger platform from the vehicles. You'll see the comparison in a little bit. They were much bigger batteries, so you're going to see there's a little bit of difference in some of the things that took place. So free burn time is 10 minutes. That's the first column. Then water application in each of these pack level cases were one line, about 30 gallons a minute, just a simple little a nozzle. And the manufacturer D, they got up to 3 nozzles. This was the smaller ones, not without the vehicles. 10-second indirect knockdown, and then applied water over time, on and off. And about 22 minutes to suppress, about 600 gallons. Now, this doesn't have a vehicle around it. This is just a pack. B, one line, on and off for about 22 minutes, 600 gallons. And notice the stranded energy is 0. The pack is pretty much burned out. There's no stranded energy. Manufacturer D, a bigger platform, 24 minutes, but they had to use almost 5,000 gallons of water. All right, so much bigger platform. This is a bit of an eye chart, but the point down bottom is this is using an agent. Go down to the bottom and look at the amount of stranded energy in some of these, okay? Also, look at the amount of extinguishers used. They refer to them as cans. So when they were using Agent B, it came in a can, so they were able to apply those instead. So 45 minutes, about 23 gallons of water on and off using that agent, or 14 extinguishers. So manufacturer B, 20 minutes, about 280 gallons, but remember you have an additive in there. Or 20 minutes, 7 cans and water. And then manufacturer D, 30 minutes, 1,400 gallons, or 15 minutes, 12 cans and 1,500 gallons.
Jesus.
So use your best judgment there. So appliances on pack level. Again, it's an eye chart. Only go right down to the bottom. 75 gallons of water, 1 abrasive reservoir, no reignition. However, you still had 40% stranded energy. Appliance B, which is the slide under, water curtain, 2,600 gallons, about 60 minutes of application, no reignition, 30% stranded energy. Manufacturer B, 145 gallons, about 10% stranded energy. 2,600 gallons, about 30% stranded energy. And then manufacturer D, 150 gallons with 2 abrasive reservoirs, no stranded energy, or 4,000 gallons, 60 minutes, 5% stranded energy. So you can see the results are kind of all over the place. But this kind of brings it down to just time. Your baseline from the start with the 10 minutes pre-burn. Water, 26 minutes, about 5,000 gallons. Using the agent, about 28 minutes, 1,400 gallons. B, 16 minutes, but 12 extinguishers and 1,500 gallons. The blanket, 34 minutes. They didn't use any water, or they didn't account for the water, the cooling water they were using. 15 minutes. Appliance A, an hour and 4 minutes, or 150 gallons. And appliance B, 53 minutes and about 4,000 gallons.
Good Lord.
So just the stranded energy. Now you see where it's green, that's good. That's 0% energy. There's very little chance of reignition, unless it was something combustible that reignited, like a seat cushion or something. But anything in yellow, orange, or red is something that you're going to have to, seriously consider a reignition as part of that. So now we're going to get into the full scale videos, and you kind of see the effects. All those eye charts there were just giving you numbers that the researchers pulled from the research. Now we're actually going to see the videos, from that. So you saw the first two that are on the right hand side of the slide there. This other one here is just an example. They used an exposure fire and flame impingement to drive it to runaway, not the overcharge. This is an example. This was not part of the research, but you can see the result is the same. So it'd be a vehicle next to a vehicle in a parking lot. That's what the example.
Those are heated panels.
I'm not quite sure what they're trying to show there, or they set a fire there next to it, but this wasn't part of the research, but it was to show you that is also another failure mechanism. All right, so this is a hose line, water only. So this is with the 10-minute pre-burn, and then we're going to talk about applying the water in certain ways. They found that applying it in a certain manner helped out with the suppression time. So they're going to use 2 streams right off the bat, and then they're going to add a third, and then eventually a fourth. Now, I know that's not realistic unless you've got 2 or 3 engine companies there and pretty much an unlimited water supply. But I'll show you why they decided to do it, to just make a point on some options that are available to you. If at certain points you can get up to 4 hose streams on the fire. Now you saw the knockdown was relatively quick. The guys on the left, the pairs there with the tan gear and the orange and yellow stripes, that's the attack crew. Now they swap off. The other two teams are vapor suppression and protection. You see the vapor suppression team is the one on their knees in the back. What they're doing is pushing the vapors away from the other host teams. Now the three firefighters at the rear here with the red one with the red helmet, that's the protection team. That's the team that's backing up the attack team in case something comes out at them to bite them through a vent or something like that. So this video, this slide kind of shows that. So you have the suppression team, you have the protection team, which is the wider triangle there, and then the hydraulic ventilation, which is just pushing vapors like you would in a hazmat situation, kind of a partial fog, and you're pushing the smoke and the vapors away from the firefighters that are going to have to get close to the vehicle to extinguish the fire. This is kind of a recommended tactic, but again, you got to be realistic. How soon can you put 3 hose lines in effect, and then what does that do to your water supply? Another thing that they discovered that is if you can come at an angle with 2 streams on either side of the vehicle and attack it, it tended to knock down the fire quicker. So as you see in this recreation, they're approaching the fire from each side at an angle where the fire is venting out underneath the car. So it's probably getting water into the battery pack through one of those vent ports that I talked about a little earlier. Now, another option, and we'll show a video of this in just a little bit, is you saw it in an earlier slide where they picked up the vehicle with some step chocks and then applied water underneath the vehicle. I saw that tactic in a couple of cities. They pull up, they use either a spreader to start, and then they get some chocks underneath, some step chocks, and then they just shove a ground monitor underneath. But again, that's 500 gallons a minute. So you got to have a pretty stout water supply or a hydrant or several tankers lined up right from the get-go when you're going to do that. So in this case, they're recommending lifting the vehicle using whatever means is necessary. If you've got to come along or any type of winch or something like that, and lifting the vehicle up. So you're exposing the bottom of the vehicle to get that cooling water onto the bottom of the battery in a more efficient manner. So you'll see it here. The car is already partially lifted. And I'll start the video here, and then you'll see them go the rest of the way. So they're lifting it from a remote area back where you see the cars lined up in the junkyard there. So they're exposing the underside, and they're just applying cooling water on that on the underside of the vehicle. But you'll also see from an aftermath picture, the battery pack is on the ground now. It's failed and it's fallen down on the ground, right about where those firefighters are standing. You saw they put the ram coming out of the picture there. They used the ram to get it up and a little bit. Now they're using a cable come along on the backside. You see the firefighters operating that. And then the other cable in the forefront here is just keeping it from tipping over and injuring any of the firefighters.
There was a stream of steam or venting when they first got there. When they were that picture started, there was a solid stream of steam coming out by the bottom of the B post.
Yep. Yeah, it's probably a vent location.
Yeah.
Right. If any of you are asking about the silver dot and the orange circle that was in an earlier slide, we're not allowed to show the wheel well or the hubs because it gives away the manufacturer, but it's really hard to do that in PowerPoint on a video. That little circle will not move with the car. I'm doing the best I can here. If you see the pile of debris underneath the car, that's the battery pack. It's failed completely. The covering around the battery pack is gone. It's melted. So now that is a pile of cylinders. So if the hazmat cleanup folks come in, they're going to have to just gather all that up and dispose of it. And we'll show you some of the disposal options available to you. It won't be you. It'll be a hazmat cleanup company that'll come in and do it. But so here's kind of an overview of what took place. 24 minutes was the average. 3,200 gallons of water. 3 hand lines was the average, complete suppression in all cases, no reignition, and no stranded energy.
Wow.
So it was found to be, this was, a very effective means. So in the myths that were out there was, it's going to take 20,000 gallons of water. It's going to take you half the day to put it out. It may be in special cases. It may be if you have a battery powered tractor trailer, they're out there. Tesla makes one, and I know there's some other manufacturers, or the bigger platform delivery vans and things like that. Yeah, you may take more water. It's going to take 10,000 gallons or 15,000 gallons. But this is for passenger vehicles only, just as a starting point, because this research is very comprehensive and also very costly. So you can't just get manufacturers to donate vehicles and say, hey, we're going to burn a dozen of your vehicles. Is that okay? So it's kind of difficult to get the startup to do this, but there'll be more in the pipeline. It's just a matter of, this is a starting point for this.
So if you had,
Go ahead.
if I could, Bob. So if you had 2 guys on the main attack line, right? Because you're going to be humping that around.
Yep.
You might be able to get away with 1 guy on each of the protection lines, but I don't know.
It's going to be company policy. Yeah. I mean, staffing is what it is. I mean, if you got a three-person engine company and you get 3 hand lines off of that truck, is somebody watching the pump, or, what have you? There's so many different options. Are you using people from the ambulance to backfill? You got to wait for the second truck to get there. In the volunteer world, are you waiting for that second piece to roll out of the station? Are you waiting for a mutual aid unit? There's all millions of variables based on local conditions, local tactics, local SOGs, and so forth. But yeah, it's based on local conditions, and that's pretty much the easiest way to put it.
And there's nothing to save there. It's
no,
going to be just a pile of rubble.
Exactly. There's not too many car fires where you make a save and the insurance company goes, "Oh, we'll pay to fix it." It's just not. It's not realistic. This kind of goes over the things that we already talked about. So now the next couple of videos are using the agents. The encapsulating agents. I think there's one video showing this. I think it's Agent B. And you can see the knockdown's pretty quick. You notice the color of the water is a little off. It's kind of tan. It's not just rusty tank water. It has the agent built into it. This is sped up just a little bit, but you can see that the knockdown is relatively quick. And then they put the ventilation hose stream in effect here in just a little bit. You saw it just for a split second. Now you'll see it. This is the protection one coming into play now. And then you'll see the vapor one coming up here at the bottom of the screen. I guess the protection line's also kind of doing a little vapor suppression as well. Now you see him, he's kind of working around the vehicle, applying where he sees fire. And you see it's relatively effective. Once he applies it for a second or two, the fire goes out. He has to go back and reapply. The fire will come out and find another way, find some air and come back out. But you notice in a matter of a couple of minutes, it's a lot of steam and vapor now, and he's just going to go around and reapply everywhere that he did. But yeah, it's relatively a good tool, but it's an expensive option. It's not something that you can just get off the shelf at your local supply house. Trying to get this to move on here. Oh, don't be that way.
Just crazy.
It's not going to let me go to the next video. Let's see here. I might have to stop and come out and come back in. So let me do that. All right. And I'm going to come back in. Just give me a second. All right. Am I back?
Yes.
Okay. So the encapsulator, the pros and cons. Quick, effective knockdown within 8 minutes. The cons are, it's another delivery method. It's like applying foam with a pail and not an onboard foam cell on a truck. Unless, you've got a fancy vehicle and you can put this stuff in a foam cell on your vehicle. But I don't know too many engines that are going to do that. You'll do this in a pail through an eductor. The The agent can trap vapor and make it difficult to find your thermal hotspots, which your thermal imaging camera. You might have to really look. And it just depends on the agent too. If you're thinking about purchasing one, make sure you get a test drive on it and see if you like it and if you can use it in your with your equipment or whatever you're purchasing. But as you can see, it is very effective. All right, so this is the Lance. This is the video that'll show you them applying that. They cool the fire for just a second, so it's safe for the firefighters to get close to the vehicle. As you can imagine, you're right up against the vehicle applying this. It's like using a set of hydraulic spreaders to pop a door. There's no way to do it remotely. You have to get right up against the vehicle to do it. So this is sped up a little bit, obviously. See the jet on the bottom coming out from between the two tires? That's evidence of a battery fire right there. So they knock it down quick, just using water. And now they're going to bring the Lance in. You can see it, the firefighter with the Euro helmet, and you see it with the hose over his shoulder. And he's going to cut a portion of the vehicle to get water into the battery pack. But see how close he has to be to the vehicle? So you have to have a protection line available, and there's two of them there. One of them is going to be a suppression line, also a protection line in case something happens. Now, what I also see here is what you get at a lot of fires. You got a lot of folks standing around watching. I wish I had this luxury in most cases, but these are folks, kind of another set of eyes for the guy operating the Lance, but also in the real world, I'd probably ask about 4 of those guys to step back in case something did happen.
I think the other thing, Bob, is the guy with the Lance is obviously very well trained in it. They used an instructor to do that rather than a student.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Right? These were researchers that had been either trained in it or that was somebody from the manufacturer that was doing it. All right. So the pros and cons, significant reduction in water because you knock it down and then you make holes where you can apply the water directly to what's burning. And plus the Lance only uses a very small amount of water under extreme high pressure with an abrasive mixed in, which is what does the cutting. The water mist is effective once it gets to the point where the fire is. Timeline was comparable. And minimal residual stranded energy risk because you were able to get into the battery and knock it down. Cost is a con, special training. If you cut into the battery pack, sometimes that's going to happen. It's going to be hard not to. You may be driving additional batteries to thermal runaway. You have to be careful of that. But there's really no way around that once you get into the floor of the vehicle. Even if you're trying your best just to cut the floorboard out, you may penetrate the battery and cause some additional runaway. If the abrasive runs out, you have to shut down and start from scratch. And hand lines are still needed for initial knockdown and for protection. All right, so this is a blanket. Now we're going to go into the blanket application. Blankets have their uses, and we'll talk about it in just a little bit. Here, they're going to be after the fire is initially knocked down, then they're going to apply the blanket. Then they're going to cool the blanket. And you'll see that. All right. So this is blanket number 1. The pre-burn, 10 minutes. Now they're going to come in, going to do a quick knockdown. And you'll see the blanket come in from the side.
This is Christmas.
So now here comes the blanket. Now they're going to tuck the blanket in. You can see it's kind of puffing a little bit with the smoke and the vapors that's coming off. They tuck it in around the vehicle and then they cool it. And that pushed some of the vapor that was trapped under the blanket. You see it pushed out. You're not going to get it completely 100% sealed. So those vent ports are always going to be there just through wrinkles and things in the blanket. But the precaution is what's going to be coming up in the next video. This is another video when they apply the water distribution device underneath the vehicle as part of the blanket operation. So the blanket's been applied. They lift the blanket and now you see him pushing that appliance underneath the vehicle. He's got himself in a real vulnerable position here. So those hose lines have got to be paying attention until he comes out of there. You have to minimize the amount of time he's under that blanket, pushing that device under there. So now they're going to let that run underneath the blanket. So that's another option. The blanket's smothering it and keeping the fire contained, but now you've also got a device underneath that's cooling the battery pack and probably reducing the amount of thermal runaway from additional batteries that are on that pack. So now this is the precaution. This is the one where, when this occurred in the research, underwriters, NFPA, and the IAFF issued a caution right after this about be extremely careful when using the blankets because of this particular risk. So what you can see here is the blanket's been applied for a while. Now it's got water pooled in it. And what the firefighters are trying to do here is get the pooled water out of the blanket so eventually they can remove the blanket. So they're doing their best to get that ponded water out from the engine compartment space. So they're grabbing a hold of it and they're going to lift it to get that last bit of water out. And I want you to watch what happens. So what happened there was a vapor explosion from underneath. So what do we know about upper and lower explosive limits? Right? You have a low explosive limit and an upper explosive limit. Below that lower and above that upper, you can't have combustion. You can't have an explosion. There's too much air, not enough fuel, or too much fuel and not enough air. What do you think happened when they started to move that blanket around? They went from having at the upper explosive limit or too rich down through the stoichiometric range, which allowed some ignition source on that vehicle, probably a hot piece of metal or an actual flame, to ignite the flammable vapors underneath the blanket. What I'll do is I'll show it to you one more time. All right. So the caution was, once you apply these blankets, you have to watch them and have to just keep them on there. Don't play with them and allow air to come under the blanket for any reason for an extended period of time. And then when you do remove the blanket, do it remotely. Pull it away from the vehicle. You'll see it in a graphic in just a little bit, kind of an option for you to do that. But these guys are all getting the water out of there so they can remove the blanket. And in doing so, it brought the vapor underneath the blanket into that explosive limit. No one was hurt. The firefighters were a little shook up, but no one was injured. You see them kind of just, what happened? You know, they're lying on the ground going, this only took a split second. But no one was injured, but they used this as a learning point, a teaching point. And the caution went out within a week after this through various channels, NFPA, UL, and the IAFF, saying be very cautious when using the blankets. So this is kind of the diagram and the graphic of what I just explained. The off-gassing fills up the underside of the blanket. It eventually gets too rich to burn. So you think you got it and it's smothered and there's no more flaming and everything. And then you add just a little bit of oxygen and there's still a hot surface in there that provides the ignition, and then you get an explosion. There was no fireball with this, luckily. They were all fully packed up and wearing their PPE, so they had that going for them. But there was no fireball. It was just a vapor explosion, and then it went out. More of a pressure wave than an actual combustion. So this was the caution that went out in May of last year, showing that both organizations had found a potential explosion hazard. We need to do some more research on this and assume, either put vents in the blankets or vent safely from a distance, or there's a lot of different options that are open. So this is what they're recommending. If you apply a blanket and you remove it, do it remotely. Do it with a piece of cable or a rope or a cord, and do it away from the vehicle. And have hose lines available when you're doing it, in case you do have a vapor explosion like they did in the experiment. So blankets, the pros, they contain the fire and the vapor, Great for an application in a parking garage or a parking lot or where the car exposes something else. If you've got to do a quick knockdown, throw a blanket over the vehicle, and then get that vehicle out of that space, or continue to cool it until you can move the other vehicles maybe. But it does have applications for that sort of thing. But again, you have to be extremely careful when you're trapping the vapors underneath. The cons, the explosion risk. Use extreme caution when removing the blankets. Oops. There we go. All right, so high level, water is still your best friend. 3,000 gallons to 5,000 gallons could be expected for a regular passenger vehicle. Those numbers will go up when you get into vans and then tractor trailer type things. Two-sided hose streams, if you can do it, attack it from two sides. Reorienting the vehicle, lifting it a little bit and getting the water underneath is another option to you. Agents, the knockdown time was comparable. Adds a little complexity because you have to deliver it like you would foam, and it can conceal where the vapors are coming off, and it can conceal some thermal benchmarks for you if you're using thermal imaging. Blankets contain the fire and the vapor. Atmospheric conditions are improved right away because that vapor cloud and all that steam is controlled by the blanket. You're not, having to work around it and having to apply a fog stream around it. But there is the explosion risk. And the operational times are longer because you're waiting for things to cool down under the blanket. And you can't just check under the blanket every 2 minutes like you would if you were baking a cake and you keep opening the door to the oven. That's not recommended if you have the blanket. Use your thermal camera. Look for the amount of vapors or steam that's coming out through a vent that may be created by a wrinkle or something. But don't continually lift the blanket to see if the fire's out. That's probably not going to be your best option. And then the high pressure appliances, we kind of talked about it. It's great, but there's a lot of things that go along with it. Mainly the cost is what's going to be the main issue there. So this doesn't talk down any of the options that are available to you. They're all tools that are available. It's what the market will bear, what your budget will bear, what the amount of vehicles, fires, EV fires, and hybrid fires that you're going to see. Again, if you have a major highway corridor that runs through your jurisdiction, chances are good that you're going to see an EV fire in the next couple of months. So what you want to do and how you want to do it is based. This research kind of gives you a head start on what you're considering. But there's not a one size fits all. The research didn't say, yes, this option is your best option. Go out and buy it, put it on your trucks. This is the end all cure all. That research did not find any one of those things to be that. The water, again, still your best option. And you had zero stranded energy after a lot of those experiments because the water pretty much, the battery pack is going to be destroyed and all that stranded energy goes away. The pros and cons, we've talked about that, the blankets and the lances. So I just want to go through this with, here's a close-up option when we get into the stranded energy thing as we start to wrap things up here. This is a close-up of when they reoriented that vehicle. That's the battery pack completely destroyed. This is the aftermath. This is what you're going to be dealing with afterwards. Those are all individual cylinders, several thousand of them, that all have to be picked up and disposed of by your cleanup company. It's easy to see there's no more stranded energy. The batteries are destroyed. There may be one that might sizzle and pop on you and ignite, but the whole battery pack is not going to go into thermal runaway because it already has. In this case, it's destroyed. Oops. So post-incident management, what kind of cleanup are you going to have? In some states, it's probably a good idea to get your environmental protection department or hazmat contingent on call when you have an EV fire and just ask for advice. They might come out and say, yeah, we need to call this contractor to come and just take care of this. Or in some parts of the country, there are specialized recovery companies, tow truck operators that have taken training in EVs and how to, pack them, how to get them back to the recovery yard, how to deal with them. They come with blankets on the trucks. They come with some small cans to pick up stray cylinders and overpack them for disposal and so on. So what this shows here is just overpacking some of the batteries. And I told you I'd show you the dumpster, I call it. This is an example from Europe. You see it's kind of two parts. It has the crane to pick the vehicle up. And then you see the dumpster, you see the LDH connection on the side of it where you would fill that dumpster with water. And some of them also have sprinkler systems in them. So if the vehicle catches fire while it's in the container, you can charge that sprinkler system like you would a standpipe, and it applies water mist to the top of the vehicle. So then you can pick this vehicle up with a flatbed, a roll-off type truck, and get it out of the area, get it to another site, let it sit in the water for 24 hours or so until it finishes off-gassing, and then dispose of it accordingly. So it's an option, but it's not very readily available in this country yet.
I did see, Bob, one where the back hinge door had a big, like 6-inch gasket, right? And so the intent was, and it had a pulley, or what am I looking for?
Yep.
Something
like a winch.
A winch.
Yep.
So they just pull it in, slam it. Then they had a bunch of the European connections, like 3 or 4 of them, fill it up. We'll see in a week.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. They make them now for this application. So they added all that engineering that you mentioned. They've got winches, they've got sprinkler connections, they've got large diameter Storts connections to flood the thing. The ramp, the one wall comes down as a ramp. You pull the car right inside before you do this, or in that case, in that slide right there, they lifted it in over the wall and put it down with a crane. It's just your imagination is the limit there. I'm sure there's somebody sitting with a box of Legos trying to figure out another way to do it. But it's out there. It just hasn't come to a neighborhood near many of you at this point. This is the summary observations. We kind of covered a lot of this already. A lot of resources, we're out there saying, oh, we need tons of this and tons of that. In most cases, you can get away with it with a lot less water than you were originally thought. But it's not a one size fits all. Some vehicles you're just going to let burn. Side of the road, no exposures, may be your best option. Just protect the exposures and let the vehicle burn down to a point where you can extinguish it and get it out of there. Others, like in a parking garage or a parking lot situation, you may be forced to attack it right away, throw a blanket on it if you have one, and isolate it from the other vehicles so you limit the damage and then get it out of there as safely as possible when you can. As I mentioned earlier, once the report is released, there's going to be 8 modules of micro-learning coming out from NFPA. And these will be available online. There'll be a big splash on the webpage, and I'll get word out, and our regional people from around the country and around North America will get the word out when it's available. It's all based on the research. So it'll be short little 10-minute modules that you'll be able to take at the station or at home. And kind of it'll be a firefighter version of the research. But what did we learn from the research for the troops in the trenches actually out doing this, as opposed to research level? A lot of information there. We're going to narrow it down to what folks need in the field to be safe and be effective. All right, so I guess we're at the questions portion of this. Whenever I show this picture, I always say there's one real mustache in that picture.
That's right.
That's right.
I love him. I love the two of them.
He's a great guy. I'll leave this up for just a split second, and then Nick and Jaymie will have it for you folks to get a hold of me afterwards if you have any questions. But let me get out of this so we can stop sharing. And
there we are.
There we are. All right.
Well, listen, bud. I don't know. Hang on. We might have a question.
Jaymie said she would be in the background, so
someone in the public chat said, "Great presentation, Bob."
That's my mother. I had her log in. And do that.
Username is Tony.
Username is Tony? Uh-oh, I think we know who that
I
is.
think I know who that is. Yeah. An old friend. He lives in Florida now, I understand.
I think right now he's in California. But yeah,
Oh,
he's living in
geez. Okay.
Florida,
He
but
moves
he's back
around.
on the road. He might be going to clean up Hawaii. I don't know.
Brother. Okay.
He's on the road. He's on the road.
Great.
Well, uh, listen, I really appreciate this because I've already got a use for this. I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to send this to Gales Ferry's training officer because again, this is perfect. It's an hour and a half.
Mm-hmm.
All the questions are answered right there. There's visuals. There's actual. This is what could happen. And again, the crazy thing about this show is tomorrow. Jaymie will do her magic, and we'll be out on Spotify and YouTube and all these other places. And I can honestly say I'm broadcasting from the international studio for Critical Conversations because there will be people in Iran, the Congo, the Netherlands, Canada, plus the United States, Djibouti. I can never
He
say
brings
it.
that up every time. That one
Yeah,
person
every
that
time.
watched from
It's his
Djibouti.
favorite.
Yep,
No,
that's his favorite.
It wasn't one. That's funny. It was there was actual percentage there. I mean, it's
Wow.
like yeah.
Great.
So I was like,
Great.
holy crap.
No,
So
fire doesn't care what country it's in. It's
No.
it's all pretty much
Right.
the same. It's a matter of what tools and
Yeah.
who you have to battle the fire with you. So that's my words of wisdom for the night.
Well, I'll tell you something else. And I say this a lot to the recruits. If you lived in a country where you had to go find your meal in the woods every day, or you didn't eat, or find fresh water, or you didn't drink, you don't even have a door on your hut. You might have a door. You have a roof over your head with a hole in it because whatever you go and find, like tires, wire, whatever, is what you're gonna burn with to keep yourself warm that night. You know, anything can happen. Anything can happen. We're so lucky. We're so lucky to have these problems. Is what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say.
Yep.
And we're fortunate to be able to do something about it. You know,
Yeah.
or
And it's the technology has been both good and bad. The new technology creates new fire problems that we have to come up with solutions to solve. So the good part is we have people, we have researchers, and we have really smart people that are coming up with tools or tactics to put these things to bed. But when we turn around tomorrow, there's going to be new technology that's going to do something to bite you, and you have to come up with something to fix that problem. So it's job security for all of us, I guess.
I think there's something that near and dear to your heart. I think they're looking at up your way. It may not be in your town, but I think they're looking at an energy center, right, for AI and all that. We haven't had a lot of conversations. At least I haven't. Everybody's kind of like, yeah, it's new. It's
Well,
over there.
there's a topic for a future podcast. It might not be me, but it might be somebody else on data centers.
Yeah,
Because AI is creating the need for these data centers to drive all of the innovation. They require a tremendous amount of power, which
tremendous.
requires batteries or off the grid sort of stuff with solar, wind, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
It's
And
crazy.
they're putting
They're
them in
huge.
places that they can, and they're extremely huge. NFPA has started to look at it. There's probably a standard in the works down the road a piece. The last issue or the previous issue of NFPA Journal, and it will be available on our website, has a big article on data centers and how to approach them. But they're just scratching the surface. The AI technology, like I just mentioned a moment ago, that technology is coming so fast, and it's not just playing around and making funny avatars for your social media. This is tremendous, stuff that's creating, things and redefining things, but it needs power. And it's just like, think of the Industrial Revolution way back. They needed coal. They needed all kinds of power to generate that. This is the new version of that, but in battery power and other alternative means, solar, wind, and all this other stuff. and it's a
just
new
crazy.
hazard for the fire service and public safety as a whole.
So if we can't control, and I'm not, this is not I meant to slam anybody in any fire department, but if we can't control a storage facility fire that has traditional combustibles and flammable papers and boxes and stuff, and it's happened a couple of times now, it gets burned to the ground, and that's with sprinklers and that's with all this other technology. How can we handle a building that's 5 times its size with all this whirring and whizzing and
Yeah, that's to be determined. That's what the research is going to have to focus on. What type of suppression? Can you use traditional sprinklers, or is it a deluge system, or is it some type of gaseous suppression? That's what the research is going to have to find. And this is what we're finding. When I say we, just mean in general, the fire service, not just NFPA, not other researchers, is that this technology is outpacing the folks trying to develop protection for it, and it should be going hand in hand. And the technology is starting to outpace the protection, and we're the research and the folks are trying their best to say, all right, this is what we need to protect this stuff, and then come back with a cost-effective solution to be able to put it into a building so you can protect the building. But fire codes are not going to allow you to build a building that's going to burn down without some type of suppression system and alarms and all these other things. But if there's no known suppression type or protection system for that, you have to design one, and that's where the crux of the problem is.
Yeah, but even look at that medical, because if you remember, there was another fire, and there was a lot of hoo-ha about it. It was I think it was a Walmart fire or a Kmart fire.
Mm-hmm.
But this fire just last week, right? I think it was California.
Yep.
I'm not positive. That was that. If you got a rack that high, it's got to be sprinklered. It's got to have in rack sprinklers, right?
Or ceiling suppression, the ESFR heads at the ceiling.
All that stuff, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And there wasn't. Now the first guys thought they had it and they turned off the sprinklers. That's a whole nother conversation. But I don't think they did that again this time.
No, the story hasn't come out yet. They're still putting water on the debris there. So that story will eventually come out. The fire department is still investigating. ATF's in there, and everything else. We'll get the story, in a few weeks or a few months, depending. But there's always questions with those things. Did the sprinkler system work? Was it in service? Was it adequate? Was it designed properly? Was there enough water for the sprinkler system? Was there a shut valve somewhere? I'm going back to my old insurance days before NFPA. You find a shut valve, or the fire pump failed, or some other issue that gets in the way of a perfectly well-designed system, that it takes one thing to just cascade the problem to the point where the building burns to the ground.
Yeah, it's just crazy. Well, listen, my friend, we have kept you for an hour and a half. I truly appreciate you giving us your time tonight. I know you have other responsibilities going on there.
Oh, now all the truck checks are being done on the other side of the door. I could hear the saws running and everything. So the guys are doing what they're supposed to be doing. So it's all good.
Doing what they do.
It's all good.
Well, so again, tomorrow this will go out on Spotify, YouTube, and all the other places that Jaymie sends it. So spread that around. If you want to show your bosses what you do at night, you can do that. Whatever you want.
Okay.
All right. I think that takes care of us for tonight.
All right. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for coming on, Bob. We appreciate it.
And Bob always checks up on me to make sure I haven't forgotten again. So
well, it was just that little. We changed the date to another month, and then all of a sudden it came up on my calendar. I'm like, oh God, I got to double check to make sure we're still on. So it's all good. Here we are.
These days, when I'm on a phone with somebody, I have to put it in the phone in the calendar right away,
immediately.
Particularly if I'm at the show or at a show, and I'm grabbing.
Yep.
And I'm grabbing this guy and that guy and this guy. I got to put the phone number in or whatever, right?
Yep.
Because if not, I'm gonna be like, I got nobody.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So all of us. Yep.
That's more technology. Yeah, no longer is the little black book where everybody's writing down dates and everything.
Right.
If it doesn't go into the phone right away, it gets lost.
It does.
So,
and even when it goes into the phone, we had to do a search. I think you had to do a search on something, right? It's the same thing. It's in there. It's in there. You just have to filter it out.
I missed when it came in. The little ping to remind me I missed it because I was on the phone or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So. Exactly.
All right, you folks have a great evening.
You
all right.
Well. Thank you, Bob.
Take care. All right. Bye now.